For more than a decade, two of the most familiar faces in American living rooms shared almost everything. The same kind of helpless, infectious laugh. The same quick, cutting wit that could turn a single raised eyebrow into a punchline. The same costume of harmless silliness. And underneath all of it, the same carefully guarded secret. Paul Lynde and Charles Nelson Reilly were in many ways the same man wearing two different masks. And yet across all those years on television, hundreds of episodes, dozens of programs, inside one small industry, where everybody knew everybody else, the two of them never truly worked together. They never shared a panel as a pair. They never built the double act that on paper seemed almost inevitable. And no one has ever fully explained why. Think for a moment about how strange that absence really is. By the early 1970s, Paul Lynde owned the center square on Hollywood Squares, firing off the wickedest one-liners on daytime television. And Charles Nelson Reilly sat in his corner on Match Game behind those enormous owlish glasses and that swirling toupee, giggling at jokes he was only half allowed to tell. They were the two great campy comedians of their generation, both beloved, both instantly recognizable. Producers in that era loved nothing more than pairing famous names together. Audiences adored both men. The bridge between their two worlds should have been the simplest thing in all of television to build. Instead, there was a wall one that almost no one ever talked about, and that almost no one has questioned since. This is not at heart a story about two enemies. It may not even be a story about a feud at all. It is a story about two men who carried the very same impossible weight in plain sight in front of millions of strangers, and who somehow could never stand inside the same frame. One of them would burn out young and die alone. The other would quietly outlive him by a quarter of a century and find the thing his rival never could. To understand the distance between them, we have to look at who they really were beneath the laughter, beneath the glasses and the snarl, and beneath the secret they both spent their entire lives protecting. Because in the end, this is not really a story about a missing television moment. It is a story about how much two gifted men were forced to hide, and about how differently that hiding ended up breaking each of them. Paul Lynde was born in Mount Vernon, Ohio, on June 13, 1926. He was a heavy child in a small Midwestern town, the kind of boy who learned very early that if he could make people laugh first, then they could not laugh at him instead. He carried that hard little lesson with him to Northwestern University, and then to New York City, where his sour, put-upon, exasperated delivery quickly turned him into a scene stealer on Broadway and in early television. By the time Hollywood Squares placed him in the famous Center Square in 1968, Lynde had perfected something genuinely rare. He could say almost nothing that was clean, say it in the middle of the afternoon on a family game show, and the entire country would roar. Charles Nelson Reilly took an entirely different road to the very same place. Born in the South Bronx on January 13, 1931, he was a man of the theater first and always. He won a Tony Award in 1962 for How to Succeed in Business without really trying, and he stood on the Broadway stage beside Carol Channing in the original Hello, Dolly. By training, by discipline, and by raw talent, he was a serious artist who would later direct great actors like Julie Harris and Uta Hagen. But television did not care about Tony Awards. It cared about the laugh, the glasses, the ascot. And so the respected stage actor became, in the mind of the public, the silly man giggling in the corner of Match Game. And here is where the two lives begin to rhyme almost note for note. Both men were funny in a way that was deeply coded. Both played what one writer bluntly called the funny sissy, the safe, sexless, slightly ridiculous bachelor that 1970s America was willing to welcome into its living room, just as long as nobody ever said the obvious word out loud. Lynde was the sharper blade, all venom and perfect timing. Reilly was the softer one, all giggles and gentle self-mockery, but they were really two halves of the very same survival strategy. The same act of hiding in plain sight, only performed on two competing stages. And those competing stages mattered more than you might think. Hollywood Squares and Match Game were direct rivals chasing the exact same afternoon audience, the same advertisers, the same loyal viewers. To the people watching at home, choosing between the two shows could feel almost like choosing a team to root for. For years, there was even a phrase that drifted around among fans taking sides. Were you a Lynde person or a Reilly person, a Squares household or a Match Game household? It was meant in fun, but it quietly revealed something real. These two men were not simply colleagues in one small business. They were from the very beginning structurally set against each other. To understand the wall between them, you first have to understand the air they were both breathing. In the 1960s and 70s, an openly gay leading man was quite simply not permitted to exist on American television. The word itself was almost never spoken aloud in public. And yet, here were two men whose entire comic personas danced right up to the very edge of that forbidden truth. Night after night, week after week, and then carefully, deliberately stepped back from it. Everybody in the audience seemed to know. Nobody at the network would ever say it. That silence, heavy and constant, was the real price of the paycheck for both of them. The lengths the industry would go to in order to protect that silence are almost difficult to believe today. When Reilly was booked onto the game show, Tattletales, a program built entirely around celebrity couples and their romances, he was paired with the actress Elizabeth Allen, who was presented to the audience as his partner. That arrangement existed for one reason, and one reason only. It allowed Reilly to appear on the show at all. A man who would later live openly and happily with the same partner for 27 years was made to borrow a pretend romance just to earn the right to sit in a television chair. Paul Lynde paid the price of that silence differently and far more cruelly. He never got the convenient pretend romance, and he never allowed himself the open one either. Friends would later describe a man who was privately lonely and who grew more bitter with each passing year, a gifted comedian who had desperately wanted to be a serious movie star and who was forced to watch that particular dream quietly die while he made strangers laugh from a brightly lit box on a game show stage. The drinking only got worse. The arrests for public intoxication slowly piled up, and the funnier he was on the screen, the darker the silence seemed to grow at home. Now picture, just for a moment, placing those two men directly side by side, on the same panel, under the same studio lights, in front of the same single camera. Two famous comedians, both quietly carrying the very same hidden life, both built upon the same fragile, unspoken joke. For the cautious men who actually ran television in that era, that may simply have been one mirror too many. Two of them together did not just double the laughter, it threatened to double the question, the exact question that nobody in that era wanted the audience to ever start asking out loud. So why in the end did they never work together? The simplest answer is the one we have already begun to touch. They belonged to rival kingdoms. Lynde was the undisputed king of Hollywood Squares. Reilly was the beloved prince of Match Game. In that business, you simply did not lend your single biggest star to the direct competition, and you certainly did not risk your own valuable franchise by forcing your headliner to share his spotlight with another man, performing nearly the identical act, only slightly differently. The economics alone made the pairing almost unthinkable. Why would either network hand its rival a gift? And why would either star agree to be made smaller for the sake of it? But there is a second answer, one that is harder and far more personal. By the late 1970s, Paul Lynde had a reputation that traveled ahead of him. He was widely known to be difficult to work with, sharp-tongued off camera, as well as on, increasingly worn down by alcohol and quick to take offense at the smallest thing. In 1979, he walked away from Hollywood Squares entirely in a bitter dispute over money. And when the tabloids printed that he had actually been fired for his drinking, he turned around and sued them, seeking $10 million in damages. This was not a man looking to graciously share his stage with anyone. This was a man holding on to it with both hands. And then there is a third answer, the one that is impossible to ever prove, and the hardest of all to shake. Perhaps the two of them simply could not bear to be reflected back in each other. Reilly was warm, generous, and beloved by very nearly everyone who ever worked with him, a man who kept lifelong friendships and gently shaped great actors. Lynde, by the end, was the opposite story, entirely growing more isolated and more guarded with every passing year. Put the gentle survivor and the man who was slowly drowning at the very same table, performing the very same secret, and you might create something almost too painful to actually film. Maybe nobody ever sat down and decided to keep them apart. Maybe it just never once felt right to anyone in the room. The honest truth is that there is no memo. There is no famous on-set blow-up that anyone recorded. There is no interview where either man ever sat down and explained the careful distance between them. We have a rivalry of networks. We have a reputation for being difficult, and we have a long silence. And into that silence, we are simply left to guess. The most truthful thing that anyone can really say is this: the pairing that everyone might have expected just never happened, and the only two men who could have told us why are now both long gone. In the end, the two paths that never crossed on screen led to two very different places. Paul Lynde finally managed to get sober in the early days of 1980. And for one brief, fragile moment, there was something that looked like real hope. He told his own agent with quiet pride that he had given up both cigarettes and alcohol at last. And then on January 10th, 1982, he was found dead in his bed inside his Beverly Hills home, discovered by his longtime housekeeper. He was just 55 years old. The official cause was a massive heart attack, his body finally surrendering after so many years of damage. He died, much as he had so often lived, completely alone. Charles Nelson Reilly went on to outlive him by a full quarter of a century. And in all of those years, he quietly did the one thing that Paul Lynde never once managed to do. He allowed himself to be loved, plainly and openly. Around 1980, the very same year that Lynde got sober, Reilly met a set decorator named Patrick Hughes, and the two of them went on to share a home and a life for the next 27 years. There was no beard. There was no pretend partner. There was only a man and the person he loved living openly in the same Beverly Hills where his counterpart had died alone. In his final years, Reilly turned his entire life into a piece of art. He built a one-man stage show about everything he had managed to survive, including, as a small boy, the unimaginable horror of the Hartford Circus fire of 1944, a disaster in which 167 people died, and where a frightened child first learned what real fear truly was. He called that show Save It for the Stage. He finally died in 2007 at the age of 76 of pneumonia, with his partner of nearly 3 decades right there at his side. The silly man in the corner had, in the end, lived by far the fuller life. And so we arrive right back at the picture we began with. Two men wearing the same mask, guarding the same secret shaped by the same unforgiving era that quietly demanded they hide who they were. One of them burned out and was gone at 55. The other quietly endured all the way to 76. They could have been a truly great double act. More than that, they could have been a genuine comfort to one another, two people who understood better than anyone else alive exactly what the other one was carrying every single day. Instead, all that remains is that wall and the question that still stands on top of it. Was it the networks? Was it the bitterness? Or was it something neither of them ever managed to put into words? We will almost certainly never truly know, and perhaps that quiet, unanswered question is the saddest punchline of all.